it was supposed to be just another night in a quiet hotel room, a peaceful escape from the world. But when you walk in, the air feels thick, almost suffocating. The room is dim, and in the far corner, there he stands, a man completely still, staring into the darkness. His presence is unsettling, like he's been waiting for you. You didn't see him when you entered, but now you can't look away. Who is he? Why is he there? And more importantly, why can't you shake the feeling that he's not alone? Story 1. The man in the rearview mirror. It was a quiet stretch of highway in rural Montana, a place where the stars shine so brightly you almost forget how isolated you are, until you remember there's no cell signal, no houses for miles, and nothing but trees and 2 lanes of road stretching endlessly in both directions. Olivia, a 28-year-old wildlife researcher, was driving back from a long day of field work. It was close to midnight, and the only sounds in her car were the hum of the engine and the occasional crunch of gravel under her tires. That's when she noticed something in her rearview mirror. At first, it looked like nothing, maybe a smudge on the glass, but as she adjusted the mirror, her blood ran cold. There was a face, pale, motionless, wide-eyed, sitting in her back seat. She swerved the car instinctively, heart pounding, pulling over to the shoulder. She spun around, gripping a flashlight, but the back seat was empty, absolutely empty. She was sure she'd seen it. She felt its presence, but there was no one there. No footprints outside, no signs of a break-in. No way anyone could have snuck in without her noticing. She chalked it up to exhaustion. Maybe she'd been staring at shadows for too long. But when she got home, she checked her dash cam, just to be safe. And what she saw made her knees buckle. At exactly 11:47 p.m., as she passed mile marker 104, the camera clearly showed a pale figure rising up in the back seat, watching her silently for several minutes before vanishing into thin air. She never drove that road again. Story 2. The voice in the vents. This one came from a man named Derek, who had recently moved into a quiet 2-bedroom house in a sleepy Oregon suburb. Nothing unusual, just an affordable rental, a good neighborhood, and plenty of space. But what he didn't know was that the house had a dark secret, one that made the previous tenants leave without warning. It all began on a rainy night, just a few weeks after moving in. Derek was working late on his laptop, sipping coffee, when he heard a sound, faint, almost like a whisper, coming from the air vent above his desk. He paused, thinking it might just be the wind or a draft moving through the ducts. But then it came again, clearer this time. A voice, and it said, "I can see you." Derek shot to his feet, heart pounding. He climbed onto his chair, leaned close to the vent, and called out, "Hello? Who's there?" Silence. The next night it happened again, this time from the vent in his bedroom. "Why are you in my house?" the voice asked. By now, Derek was convinced someone had hacked into a speaker system or was playing some sort of twisted prank. He contacted the landlord, who hesitated, then confessed that multiple previous tenants had reported strange voices from the vents, especially late at night, but no source was ever found. Derek installed security cameras in every room. For 3 nights, nothing happened, but on the 4th, just past 2 a.m., one of the cameras picked up something horrifying. From the ceiling vent in the hallway, a pale hand slowly reached out, long fingers, impossibly thin, and then pulled back in before vanishing. Derek moved out the next morning. No one has rented the house since. Story 3. The Mirror in the Basement. A young woman named Clarissa inherited her late grandmother's house in Pennsylvania, a century-old Victorian property with creaky floors and dusty hallways. She was excited. It was the perfect place to restart her life after a rough breakup. But what started as a peaceful escape soon turned into a descent into paranoia. In the basement, behind an old wooden cabinet, Clarissa found a full-length mirror. It was ornate, antique, the frame carved with strange symbols she didn't recognize. It was odd, because she'd never seen it before during childhood visits, and no one had mentioned it in the estate paperwork. Still, she cleaned it up and moved it upstairs. That's when things began to change. First, it was small, keys missing, lights flickering. She'd walk into a room and feel like someone had just left. But it was the mirror that unsettled her most, because sometimes her reflection didn't quite match. She'd catch herself in the corner of her eye, but the woman in the mirror was slightly delayed, or blinking when she wasn't, smiling when she wasn't. One night, Clarissa woke to find the mirror's surface fogged over, as if someone had breathed on it from the inside. She stared in horror as 5 long, finger-like streaks dragged down the glass from the other side. The next morning, she smashed the mirror and took it back down to the basement, but she didn't throw it out. Why? She couldn't say. Something inside her wanted it to stay. 2 weeks later, her neighbor came over, pale and shaking. He'd seen her in the upstairs window, except Clarissa wasn't home that night. In fact, she'd been out of town, visiting a friend. She returned the next day to find the mirror back in her room, fully intact, not a single crack. She moved out the same week. Story 4. The Crying Boy Painting. In 1985, in a quiet town outside of Yorkshire, England, a fire gutted the home of Ron and May Hall. Everything was destroyed. Furniture, photos, wallpaper charred black by thick smoke. But as firemen sifted through the rubble, one object remained untouched, lying face down in the ruins. A painting of a little boy, crying. Unburned, not even a singe mark. The fire chief thought it was bizarre, but what he said next chilled the halls. This isn't the first time. We've seen this exact painting survive multiple fires. The painting became known as the Crying Boy, and reports began surfacing all over the UK. House fires would erupt, seemingly without cause, and the only item to survive would be that same painting, identical down to the tear streak on the child's face. People started whispering that the painting was cursed. Tabloid papers ran headlines like, "Cursed Painting Strikes Again," and "Crying Boy Survives 6th Blaze." Several firefighters publicly claimed they refused to have it in their homes. They'd seen too many coincidences. One woman in Essex swore that after she hung the painting, her dog died, her husband left, and her house caught fire within months. The painting survived. Some experts tried to explain it. Maybe the glossy coating made it more flame retardant. Maybe it was coincidence. But how do you explain dozens of homes, all burned, and this one painting always left behind? In desperation, a radio DJ once organized a public burning of hundreds of Crying Boy paintings. People mailed them in. They were thrown into a massive bonfire. The strange thing, some of them refused to catch fire, even after an hour. To this day, no one knows who the boy was, or why his image seemed to carry such darkness. Story 5. The Man in the Backseat. It was a stormy night in 2001, just outside of Phoenix, Arizona. A woman named Angela was finishing a late shift at the diner where she worked. The rain was coming down in sheets, and visibility was poor. She was exhausted, hungry, and just wanted to get home. She walked quickly to her car in the near-empty parking lot, fumbling with her umbrella and keys. She got in, started the engine, and pulled out onto the highway. That's when she noticed it. A large pickup truck behind her, tailgating aggressively, flashing its high beams. She changed lanes. So did the truck. She sped up. So did the truck. Then the driver began honking, swerving behind her erratically, flashing lights again and again. Angela panicked. Was this road rage? Was he trying to run her off the road? She tried to stay calm, gripping the wheel tighter, thinking about pulling into a gas station or calling the police. Suddenly, the truck swerved around her and cut her off, screeching to a halt. A huge man jumped out and ran toward her car. Angela locked her doors and prepared to reverse. When the man shouted, "He's in the back seat. He's in your car." Heart pounding, she slowly turned and looked behind her. There, crouched low in the back seat, was a man holding a knife. He'd been there the entire time. The truck driver had seen him climb into her car while she was still inside the diner. He followed her, trying to signal her, desperately flashing his lights every time the man in the back seat made a move. The police were called. The man in the back seat had a long criminal record: stalking, assault, even attempted kidnapping. Angela never drove alone at night again, and for weeks she couldn't stop checking the back seat, even in broad daylight. Story 6. The night shift at the hospital. Hospitals are meant to be places of healing, but late at night, in the dimly lit halls, they can feel like something else entirely. This story comes from a nurse named Claire, who worked the night shift at a small town hospital in Tennessee. The building was old, parts of it dated back to the 1940s, and the third floor, once used for long-term psychiatric patients, had been shut down for years. One night, around 3 a.m., Claire was doing her usual rounds when she noticed something strange. The elevator opened by itself. She waited, thinking maybe another nurse had called it, but no one was there. The elevator stayed open for several seconds, then the doors slowly closed. Curious but not alarmed, she walked past the elevators and toward the nurse's station. When she heard the soft ding again, the elevator doors opened once more, but this time it went up to the third floor. That was impossible. The third floor was locked, unused, and completely empty. She radioed the front desk to ask if maintenance had been working up there, but they hadn't. Then, over the radio, another nurse chimed in with a chilling voice. "Claire, did you just walk past me in the hallway?" Claire's blood ran cold. She'd been alone the entire time. The nurse on the other end swore she'd seen someone wearing Claire's exact scrubs, walk past room 212 just moments ago. Claire's legs nearly gave out. Room 212 was at the end of the hallway. She hadn't been anywhere near it. They searched the floor together. No one. Nothing. But in room 212, they found something unsettling. The rocking chair in the corner, which hadn't been touched in years, was moving just slightly, as if someone had just gotten up. The hospital installed cameras shortly after that night, but to this day, some of the staff say they still hear footsteps coming from the third floor, even though it's been sealed shut. And when the elevator dings at 3 a.m., no one wants to be the one to check. Story 7. The Man in the Woods. This story comes from a hiker named Josh, who decided to take a solo weekend trip into the Appalachian Mountains, something he'd done many times before. He wasn't new to camping or hiking, and he knew how to stay safe. But nothing could have prepared him for what happened on that cold October night. Josh had set up his tent deep within the forest, miles from the nearest town. As the sun set and the forest grew quiet, he started a small fire and made dinner. It was peaceful until he heard footsteps. Not animal noises. Footsteps. Slow, measured, human. He grabbed his flashlight and called out, "Hello, is someone there?" Silence. He scanned the trees, but saw nothing. Shrugging it off, he assumed it might be a deer, or maybe even another hiker passing through. He zipped up his tent and went to sleep. Around 2:30 a.m., he woke up to a sound that froze his blood. Breathing right outside his tent. It was heavy, deliberate breathing, not from an animal. It sounded human. He didn't move. He didn't make a sound. He just listened. Then, a whisper. Josh. His name. Someone whispered his name from outside the tent. Panic set in. He fumbled for his flashlight, unzipped the tent, and shined the light around. No one. But in the dirt just outside the flap were bare human footprints. Dozens of them. As if someone had been walking circles around his tent, barefoot. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. At first light, he packed up and hiked out as fast as he could. The trail he'd taken in had been completely undisturbed. No other footprints, no signs of anyone. When he finally reached his car, he found a note wedged under his windshield wiper. It was scribbled in jagged handwriting on torn paper. It read, "Don't come back alone again." He reported it to the local ranger station, but there were no known people in the area that night. No suspects, no answers. To this day, Josh refuses to camp alone again. Story 8. The Elevator That Never Opened. This terrifying encounter comes from Mia, a young woman working late nights at a downtown high-rise in Chicago. Her job in finance often kept her at the office past midnight, and while she didn't love walking the empty corridors alone, she had gotten used to it. Until one night, when everything changed. It was just after 1 a.m. Mia was the last one in the office, shutting down her computer and gathering her things. The building was silent, too silent. Even the faint hum of traffic outside seemed to fade away. She walked to the elevator, pressed the down button, and waited. Ding! The light above the elevator turned on. It had arrived, but the doors didn't open. She pressed the button again. Nothing. She could hear the faint mechanical clicking and whirring behind the metal doors, like something was shifting, but the elevator just sat there, closed. Suddenly, the floor indicator above began to change, from 14 to 13 to 12. It was going up, but no one had called it. She hadn't pressed any other buttons. else had gone home. Still, the elevator rose, floor by floor, slowly. Then it stopped on 21, the top floor. Mia stood frozen. There was no 21st floor in their building. They only had 20. She backed away from the doors just as the elevator dinged again, this time louder, harsher. The metal doors trembled slightly but stayed shut. Then she heard it, breathing, not from her, from behind the doors. It was soft, then louder, like someone was standing inches from the other side, trying to hold in a scream. She turned and bolted for the stairwell, racing down all 15 flights without stopping. When she reached the ground floor, the night security guard looked up, startled. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, trying to catch her breath. Then she asked, "How many floors does this building have?" He looked confused. 15, he said. Always has. Later, she checked with building management. No records of a 21st floor, no elevator malfunctions logged, and the cameras in the hallway blacked out between 1 and 1:10 a.m., the exact time she had been standing there. She never worked past 8 p.m. again. StarChat GPT said, Story 9. The man in the corner of the 8 hotel room. This incident was shared by a traveling musician named Ethan, who swore he'd never return to the town of El Paso, Texas, after what he experienced in 2016. He was on tour, exhausted after back-to-back shows, and checked into a small, older hotel that looked clean enough but had that heavy, stale air you only find in places where too many stories have been buried. It was a corner room, 402. As soon as he entered, something felt wrong. The lights flickered faintly, and the air smelled like damp earth and mildew, even though the AC was on full blast. But Ethan was too tired to care. He took a quick shower, dimmed the lights, and collapsed onto the bed. That's when it started. At first, it was just a feeling, like he wasn't alone. You know that sensation when someone's watching you. He rolled over and glanced around the room. Empty. But in the far corner, across from the bed, just beyond the small chair and floor lamp, there was something darker than the rest of the room. A patch of shadow that didn't match the lighting. He blinked, and then he saw it. A figure, sitting in the corner, perfectly still. Just sitting. No face, no features, just darkness shaped like a man watching him. Ethan's body went rigid. He reached for the bedside lamp, flipped it on. The corner was empty. His heart slowed and he laughed nervously. "I'm just overtired," he told himself. "It's nothing." He turned the lamp off. The man was back. Same position, same shape. But this time, closer. He turned the lamp back on. Gone. Off. Closer. Every time the light disappeared, the figure moved nearer, but never while being seen. It reached the edge of the bed, and then the mattress sank, as if something heavy had just sat beside him. Ethan screamed, leapt out of bed, and flicked every light on. Nothing. No shadow. No figure. But the feeling didn't leave. It lingered like static in the air. He packed his gear in under 2 minutes, left the room, and checked out without looking back. The receptionist didn't seem surprised. "Room 402, she said. "You're the third one this month. We usually keep that one vacant, but sometimes we forget." Ethan never played in El Paso again, and to this day, He sleeps with the lights on.